Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
I'm your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that is presently falling. Now, today, we have a very special episode because we have one of my friends, Matt Cluthe. Matt, how you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Now, Matt, for people who might not know, because our podcasts it'll reach our friends, but it goes out everywhere on the internet.
Yeah.
You are a singer, you're a songwriter, you're in a band, you do solo stuff, you do it all. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Houston. I started playing music when I was in high school. I was in a really, really terrible band. Played drums and sang, which when you're 15, 16 years old is always an interesting proposition to be singing. And went to college, and when I was there, there was a guy who took a English comp course with who's in a band, and their drummer broke the wrist. He asked if I could sit in, and I said sure. I mean, I wasn't a great drummer, but I could keep time. And in return, he taught me the basic chords, which is kind of something that I always wanted to learn. And from that point, I was just kind of off and running. I'd always been writing and had melodies in my head and so on and so forth. Kicked around, played a lot of solo shows in the Midwest when I was going to college, and moved back here. I was in a band here for a while. We were starting to get a lot of good gigs, and then I got married. The lead guitarist moved to Arkansas, and the drummer moved to Nashville. So we just kind of still great friends with those guys. And then right around then is when I met Chris, shortly after I got married. And I met him through the Pearl Jam community, and we just started trading demos back and forth, and said, well, let's just try doing it. And this was back in 2009. So we started just doing it through Dropbox. Like, he'd send me a GarageBand file, I'd drop it into my MacBook and mess around with it, and that's kind of how it started. And I've also been doing some solo stuff. I have a solo record done, started doing some EPs and just various things. My wife's also very musical. She plays piano, so there's always music in our house. So yeah, it's a bit of a snapshot. So I guess I've been playing music since, good grief, like 30 years. That's nuts. I didn't even realize that till right now. So yeah, because I started when I was about 16. Yep.
But you didn't start guitar. You started drums. Was that and singing were your two main instruments?
Yeah. We were not very good, but we had a lot of fun. And we played a couple gigs. The name of the band was Crossroads.
Okay.
No idea why. We had some original stuff. We do a couple covers. Our sets were usually really short. They're like 5 songs, and then we were booed off stage. So but yeah, really in college, I mean, when I learned those basic chords, and he just gave me a chord chart, he hand wrote out a chord chart, and once I learned those, I was off and running. And a friend of mine let me borrow a nylon classical, which is great because the frets are wider and the strings are a little bit easier on your fingers, and so I learned on that.
That's kind of Tony and I, when we first started learning guitar, our dad, he doesn't play guitar, but he has a guitar, and he had a classical guitar too. And that's the guitar that I took to our high school, to our guitar class. And that's kind of how I learned too. So when
That's cool.
got the first, steel string guitar, it was rough on the fingers.
Yes. Yeah. It was quite the transition. I remember that. And actually, I think I got an electric before I got a steel string acoustic. And I got this crappy pawn shop electric for like $50. And I wish I still had it, because that thing, it was gnarly, but it sounded great. But it hurt like hell on my fingers.
Now that I'm remembering it, during COVID, didn't you do one of those, like, where you buy the parts for a guitar and like build it yourself?
Yeah. I did. I think that company's gone out of business yet. Or gone out of business since then, or maybe they're doing it under a different name. But they were called the Fretwire. and I'd always wanted a telly, and I like to explore alternate tunings. So I wanted a guitar that I could just beat up, and I
Hmm.
wasn't going to be like heartbroken. I kind of like a throwback to that pawn shop guitar that I had. But yeah, it was a fun project. Every day I do a little bit more, whether it was so much sanding. I've so much sanding and so many layers of protectant, but it was awesome. And it plays, I mean, it's loud. That thing
Yeah.
is that thing is loud. And I can't really play it clean. It doesn't stay in tune very well. But if you're doing like a heavy, like power chord, like fast paced number, it's awesome. And it'll give you some good feedback for sure.
Tony, you should appreciate that because aren't you kind of fixing up a guitar you got at a garage sale?
Yes, I did pick up the Stratocaster, like I think it was like a '90s, like made in Korea Squire,
Nice.
and pretty much for like the same purpose, just something I could like if I want to do alternate tunings, just kind of learn more about guitar, maybe like the physical components and stuff. So I really
Yeah.
respect that. I also do want a telly, so this is further another reason to get one.
Yeah. It's got a totally different tone. And it was a fun project. And especially those first, I think they sold out like within 2 months of when the lockdown kind of happened. But I got in early, and thankfully, but it was great, because I'd finished working, and then I just go out to the garage and just kind of tinker, and I had no idea what I was doing in terms of the wiring and all the electronics and stuff like that. So that was fun. But I've never soldered anything before, but thankfully a buddy of mine, one of my neighbors was able to help me. So oh no, not a neighbor. It was actually someone I worked with because we were back in the office by then. So yeah. So but it worked out, and so it's a good knock around.
So you were mentioning, wanting to play in different tunings and whatnot, and that got me thinking because Tony likes doing that a lot too, and that kind of leads me to thinking of like, like what were your musical like inspirations, whether it was growing up and after being in your first band, like who were you listening to that was making you want to play and write your own music?
Hmm. I'm the youngest of four, so like whatever my siblings were listening to, I definitely was interested in. My oldest sister turned me on to Soundgarden when I was 12, so back in
Oh,
Yeah.
89.
we just did a
So,
Soundgarden episode yesterday.
oh, nice. Yeah, so Ultra Mega OK holds a special place in my heart. She sent me that tape when I was like 11 or 12 years old. She's also the one who got me into Pearl Jam.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so definitely listening to those guys, big influences. I was listening to a lot of like down here in Houston, there's like a classic rock station, 93.7. I don't even know if they're still on, to be honest with you, but I would listen to a lot of a lot of the Stones, a lot of Dylan, a lot of Tom Petty. Um,
Oh yeah.
so there was definitely my ears were kind of wide open, but there was definitely a certain, I think, the guitar element that always just kind of grabbed me, and especially when there was a strong rhythm section, because I think the guitar can't really shine or elevate unless you have that drum and bass foundation that's just solid. Um, so yeah, I think growing up, it was those guys. My sister was really into Crowded House and Neil Finn. I've been a fan of his since I was a kid. Got to meet him when we lived in Portland, which was mind blowing. Um, Neil Young. I mean, I could go on and on, um, but yeah, I was listening to a little bit of everything, and then kind of when I went to college, it just kind of just grew, and I started listening to more and more bands. Really started getting into Radiohead right around the time the Bends came out, and so yeah, I mean, even to this day, that's one of my favorite things to do is just find out new bands. Like I went to see Pearl Jam at Fort Worth, and I'd only heard a couple of songs by Deep Sea Diver, and they blew me away.
I got into them recently too.
Holy crap. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that
Yeah.
their latest record on vinyl
Yeah.
couple I think last year. And I
Yeah.
just saw them on YouTube. They did the KEXP, and
Hmm.
they did a set of songs, and it like auto played on when I was watching videos, and I was like, I like this sound a lot. And
Yeah.
um, I missed out. They were gonna open for was it Spoon or Death Cab for Cutie? And and it was a concert that was canceled, and I didn't end
Oh,
up getting to see them.
oh,
But
that
yeah, they're
sucks.
great.
Yeah. But I mean, so whenever there's a band that I'm going to go see, I always want to find out who the opening band is. And then I just try to listen. And I think I'd heard maybe a song or two of theirs before, but really did a, no pun intended, deep dive on their catalog. And just, I mean, she's a phenomenal songwriter. And so, yeah, just always keeping the ears open.
Now, I'm curious how you got into, because I'm sure Tony's interested about this, Elliott Smith, because Elliott Smith is one of Tony's favorites.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I just
Yeah.
got into him by luck, but I'm curious if you have a certain story getting into him.
I do. I mean, it was kind of by luck as well. He's hands down one of my favorite songwriters, without a doubt. I mean, he's up there in my top 5. The guy could play the guitar like a madman and put these phrasings together that shouldn't fit, but somehow he'd make them fit. I was visiting my sister in Kansas City. I think this is when I was in college. So I went to a smaller school about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of Kansas City. And I was visiting her for the weekend. This is the same older sister that turned me on to Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. And so we're very similar, and our music tastes are very similar. And we walked into this record store that was near the West Plaza area. It's not there anymore. It's too bad because it was awesome. It was called Dirt Cheap Records. And as soon as we walked in, what song was it? I think Stupidity Tries is the song that was playing. And I'm like, who the hell is this? And like, I recognized his voice, like maybe I had heard it here or there. And I asked the guy behind the counter, and he's like, oh, this is Elliott Smith. And I was like, do you guys have his stuff? He's like, yeah, it's over there. I bought almost everything they had just from one
Wow.
song. Yeah, it just had a profound impact. And Maura, my sister, was like, yeah, I didn't know you liked Elliott Smith. I was like, neither did I until we walked in here. But apparently she'd been listening to him for a few years and just didn't tell me about him. It's like, thanks a lot. So we moved to Portland a little too late, unfortunately. We didn't get to see him live. But I have a lot of friends up in the Portland area from when we lived there that got to see him multiple times, and very jealous of them. So how did you get into him, Tony?
Actually through Rico. I think he had showed me Needle in the Hay or something like that. And
Yeah.
I checked out the rest of that self-titled album and really was just kind of taken away by like the intimacy of it.
Yep.
And then I remember kind of the next album of his I really got into was like Figure 8.
Yes.
Just because of how grand it is. It's
Yep.
like, whoa, the complexity and the production, the writing, arrangements, like it was definitely mind blowing for me. And I think now we recently done a podcast for XO, which I think is kind of maybe my overall favorite. And funnily enough, I think Rico had sent me like a post of yours where you had actually like mentioned that as being like one of your favorites from his, if I'm not mistaken here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. XO is awesome. I love XO. Blood White is one of my favorite songs.
That was one of my favorites because when I like first heard of Elliott Smith and listened to like some kind of greatest hits album that they had released of his, I only got into a couple songs and I was having a hard time connecting that like a lot of people around me were. But I showed it to Tony and he connected to it like instantly.
Yeah.
So he like ended up like getting all his stuff and becoming a mega fan. And I kind of just only knew some of the songs. Like I kind of really only like knew the songs from Good Will Hunting and whatnot.
Yeah.
And now that we're doing this podcast, we do a series every month where we each give each other an album that the other person has never heard before.
Right.
And we just take an episode where we just go over the album. And Tony, the first album you gave me from Elliott Smith was actually From a Basement.
That's a great album.
Yes. I wanted to rock his world. Him being someone that only like is pretty familiar with either or.
Yeah,
I was just like, let's throw you in the deep end,
That is the deep end.
Yeah, so it is interesting kind of how, usually like Tony kind of got into some of the bands that, I liked, when I was growing up, because I would show him, like, when I was really getting into Pearl Jam, I was kind
Mhm.
of showing Tony, and somehow he was like, out of all the grunge bands, I'm actually gonna take Soundgarden, and that's gonna be my band. So him and I collided on the two.
But I do like to tell people I'm a secondhand Pearl Jam mega fan.
There you go.
Yeah, he knows a lot of the deep cuts. And we've done a couple Pearl Jam episodes. We did one with Chris where we talked about Riot Act.
Mm.
Um, and this is probably a good time to mention, that's how you and I, Matt, connected, was
Yeah.
on the Pearl Jam forum, the 10
Yep.
Club forum. And I want to say, because I got into Pearl Jam right when Backspacer came out.
Uh-huh.
And I don't, was that 2009
Yeah, it was
ish?
2009.
2009. So that was right when you and Chris were starting, right? With Cluthe. We probably should, and I'm going to list in the comments of this video in the description links to where people can check out
Yep.
Cluthe's music, your solo music, your Bandcamp, and whatnot.
Awesome.
But yeah, how did that start? You guys just met on the forum and were liked so many of the same bands?
Yeah, I think it was like in the musicians and gearheads portion of the forum. Um, he's gonna laugh when I can't remember who posted what, but one of us posted something about a home recording that we had done, and I think the other person liked it or sent them a message like, "Hey, that sounds really good." And then we just connected, and it's like, well, you want to try this thing through Dropbox, which I mean, obviously everyone's doing it now, but back then it was like people were like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
So you guys aren't in the studio together? You're not doing?" And the whole process for the first record is a whole other story. That thing was wild to even make. But he sent me a demo and he's like, "Why don't you just, don't worry about adding any instruments to this. Let's just see what you want to do with it vocally." And I said, "All right, cool." So he sent me the wrong song, apparently. He meant to send me a completely different song, but what he sent me was Presently Falling.
Presently falling behind your eyes. All days have passed now. You lost your disguise.
What ended up being Presently Falling. And I just kind of jotted down some lyrics and was just kind of coming up with the melody, and it's got this real atmospheric quality to, especially his guitar part. There's some weird effect that he put on it. So I was like, I'm just gonna record it. So I think I did a dry run and then I just hit record and I sent it back to him. He's like, "Oh shit, I sent you the wrong song." Like, "Oh, it's fine, no big deal." So that kind of started it, and so we started talking about it, and said, "Hey, let's go ahead and let's just do this," because we kept exchanging emails. We had all these ideas. So that's when we started Cluthe Lee, and I think the second song was Setting Sun. And I did some piano on that. And then I have my mom's classical guitar, which I altered the tuning of it and I dropped it down a whole step because I didn't have a bass, and I made that the bass track.
Nice.
And
I
so
did
when
that
you hear
before I
this,
had a bass too.
yeah, you hear this boom. That's the low E on this 1963 Gretsch classical, just popping through. So yeah, and then we just started going back and forth, and that whole thing, like for me, that record, I didn't have a setup really. I was using my MacBook and I was using the built-in mic, just like I'm doing for this podcast. And so if I was recording guitar, I'd have the MacBook in like the living room facing away from the amp. And then I'd put towels over the amp and I'm just playing as loud as I can just to get the right tone. And I'd be singing in the kitchen just so it picks up the right way. I mean, it was bizarre, but it was so much fun. So yeah, we just kept going, and I think it evolved. And the new record it's done. I mean, I think we just wanted to, and Chris, to his credit, has been very patient because we've had a lot of changes in the last year with our daughter being born and with us moving across the country, and he's just kind of like patiently waiting. And we're both pretty excited to dive in and record new music once we release this. So, but yeah, it's been going strong. Pretty excited about it. And he's a great guy. He's easily become, over the last 15 years, one of my best friends, and I trust him implicitly, and his family's great. So yeah, just honored to be in that group with him for sure.
Did he ever send you the right song afterwards? Was that one of the songs that made it on
I
the
don't
first
think
album?
he did. I don't think he did. It was kind of a happy accident. And to be honest with you, like the end of that song, I think I thought it was longer because I had a whole other section that I had written, but I think I got excited, so I was just like jumping ahead, and then when I stopped singing, all of a sudden it's because the music stopped. So I was like, okay, I guess that's it.
That's where it ends.
Like, that's done. So yeah, we've had a lot of fun. We traded instruments a lot. Usually, whoever wrote the guitar or the rhythm will kind of take over and maybe do the bass. And he's had the drum kit. Some of the songs in the new record I'm playing drums on. And I'll play piano, and Laurel will sing, my wife, and we just have fun with it. So you never know where it's going to go, and it's a completely different process from, just doing solo stuff.
And you guys never met in person until I remember when you guys did a show together, right? I don't know when this was. I remember seeing the videos. You guys did meet up and played a live show, right?
We did. We met the first time we met. He and his wife. We were living in Waco because my wife was going to grad school at Baylor. We lived in Waco. We went to Austin a ton because it's only an hour or so away, and Waco kind of sucks. So we would go to ACL every year. We go to Austin City Limits Music Festival. So Chris and his wife Allie came down and went to the festival with us one year in 2010, and that was awesome. We had a great time. But it was the first time we met. We just were like hanging out in their hotel room, and just with guitars and just jamming and having fun. And then the next February, it was Super Bowl weekend. The Super Bowl was being held in Dallas, and there was an ice storm.
Oh, no.
So Laurel and I drove up from Waco, and Chris and Allie flew in from Missouri. Their flight was canceled, but they made it to the gig on time, and we hadn't even practiced these songs together at all. And we played like a 3-hour show, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, I remember seeing the videos, and you guys sounded great. And
Thanks.
It's insane that you guys didn't like practice beforehand. And I mean, it makes sense. Long distance, it's hard to, Tony and I are long distance now, and we're trying to work on music together, and it can be a battle sometimes. It can be a struggle.
Yeah, it can. It can be tough. I think he came in. No, he didn't come in. I'm thinking of when we did the PJ20 pre-party. He came in. Maybe that's when we had a chance to practice. But yeah, Dallas was insane. I mean, we played 45 minutes in a hotel room like months prior, and that was the only time we practiced. So yeah, it was fun though.
Tony, when Tony actually has when I moved from Washington, I didn't take a lot of stuff with me. I didn't take a lot of my CD collection. I only took my records at the time. So Tony was left with all my CDs, and he has all 3 CDs from you guys.
Nice.
And
they are in possession.
He even has or maybe I have it. One of us has the guitar pick.
Yeah, is this the one? It has like writing.
Oh, yeah, there are 2 of them.
2 of them.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we did it for the second and the third one. So that's the one for Life Can Go. I think this is the one for Where It Began. And we have a ton of these, so I just use them. Why
Yeah,
not?
because I think it. I think when I bought, I don't know, like when you guys were selling the CDs, if it came with it or.
Yeah, we ordered the picks separately and designed them, and then we just threw them in the packages because we don't have a distributor. I mean, it's just Chris and I and our wives. So when those CD orders come in, it's us that's like packing them up and shipping them out. So this next one's gonna be a little different. I think we're just gonna probably just do it digitally to start. And my she's done all the artwork for all three.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember.
Maura,
Nice.
my oldest sister, and she's working on the artwork for this one as well. So
The art's
eventually
great.
it'll see a physical release.
I like the artwork because I can tell that it's the same person for each album,
Yep.
and which gives me Radiohead vibes. You know, I know they have the same artists like do all their artwork,
Mhm.
and that's funny because when Tony was listening through the CDs, I believe I can't remember what song specifically, but I know he was listening to a song from the third album, Where It Began. And he was telling me he was getting major Radiohead vibes with some of the songs.
And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much Radiohead. Like I know In Rainbows and OK Computer, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I was kind of picking up that vibe, kind of with like some of the, because even like Presently Falling, that's got like the kind of the guitar effects going on, like something like that reminds me of Radiohead. And so of course I was like, Rico, he likes Radiohead, right? And he's like, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, they're easily one of my favorite bands, and I mean I love Tom York, and I love his new band, The Smile, and their new record is amazing. Big fan of that. But what song was it on Where It Began that reminded you of Radiohead? I'm curious.
I think it was if
it-
I recall, it was wasn't it? I think it was London Dream.
That's the one I was thinking too. Yeah.
I woke quite suddenly from the grips of a vivid dream. I was walking through an airport with my love on my arm, but I wasn't sure.
It has like some of the chords and even the production, which something else I was going to ask is I feel like with each album, the production you guys get, I don't know if you just get more comfortable or if you guys just got more familiar with the programs you're using, but like the production on that third album is fantastic.
Thank you. Well, that one we actually had professionally mastered. There's a guy that mastered it. His name's Will Reeves, and he's got a studio there in Columbia, where Chris is, Columbia, Missouri. And Chris spent a lot of time with Will going through all this stuff, and it was a lot. But the finished product, I think you're right. I think this one isn't. I don't think we're gonna have this one professionally done. I don't know. We're pretty happy with it. Chris has actually done a lot of the legwork himself. He has become a lot more comfortable with the mixing and the mastering side of it, and I've heard the early mixes, and I'm pretty damn happy with it. I think he's done a great job. But London Dream was a trip. Yeah, there's a lot of I think I was using, there's a certain effect. I don't have a ton of pedals, but one of the pedals I have is a digital A, and it has a reverse echo on it.
Nice.
And a lot of those during the kind of quieter periods where there's no vocals and just the melodic, you can hear it and it just kind of swirls around. And I love that effect. It can really just kind of like, what the hell is going on here? And yeah, that's probably one of my favorites. That's a tough song.
And it makes me curious too, because Tony is, when it comes to guitars and equipment and pedals, that's like that's right down Tony's lane. And it's not mine. Like, I have one electric guitar, one acoustic, one bass. That's probably how it's going to be forever, just because it's not even like, even if I saved up money to buy guitars, I don't think I have the ear to like know the differences. But Tony like loves doing that type of stuff.
It's all about the tone.
Yep.
And I'm curious, what guitars do you have now? Like what have you like your go-to when you record or just your writing process?
Yeah, I have a couple of acoustics, old beat up acoustics where I do a lot of my writing. And actually, I have this one, which is a little Martin Traveler. This is
Oh,
what I'm using on all those EPs, every single
oh,
guitar, because all the rest of my equipment's in storage because we moved.
uh,
So it's in climate controlled storage. But as far as other stuff, my amp is a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe that I've
Nice.
had for 15 years. I think 15, no, longer than that. 20 years, I guess. And pedal wise, I have a handful. That Digital A is probably my favorite. I have a couple of overdrive or boost pedals that I use every once in a while if I want a little bit more sustain or crunch. Because the Hot Rod Deluxe is awesome for clean tones, and it just really sounds so pure. So if you're playing clean, it sounds awesome, but if you want to give it some heft, it doesn't really have it. So that's where you kind of need the overdrive. Guitar wise, my electric, the one that I probably record with the most is the Gretsch Electromatic. I absolutely love it.
that's the orange one, right? That I always
Yeah,
see on. Yeah, see, I can't name guitars even if I see them, but I remember
it's the
them,
orange one, man.
and it's the orange one. But that's a beautiful guitar. Like I
It,
can appreciate guitars just on their appearances, and I love the way that one looks.
yeah, I mean, I love the way it looks too, and I had my eye on it for a long time, and I kept like, whenever I'd go to Guitar Center, I'd play it and I'd play it, and I just started shoveling a little bit of extra money away, and eventually I had the money to buy it, so I just went and bought it. The other guitar, I have a '93 American Strat. Um, I use that a lot for my open tuning stuff, especially if I'm doing a lot of slide work, because it doesn't have very high action on it. So I like it closer to the fretboard, and I think it sounds really nice, and it kind of holds the notes a little bit better. I have the Telly, my Frankenstein Telly that I love that I built. I have a jazz bass, just a Squire jazz bass, and I think that gives a nice tone. And then, my uke and mandolin, and there's probably a few I'm forgetting, but yeah, I'm kind of always looking. I'm kind of a hybrid between you guys. It's like I have my trusted, core
Mhm.
instruments, but I love messing around with pedals and see if there's something that just sounds a little different or sounds a little weird. And um, I'm kind of thinking about my next guitar. I'm always kind of thinking about my next guitar. So not sure what it'll be, but I love the Gretsch a ton. It's a fun guitar.
Yeah, I have a friend that has a Gretsch too, and like I've always like thought about like, oh, that'd be cool to get one, but it's like I never really think about it until I pick one up, and I'm like, okay, I get why people love these things, you know?
Yeah. They're so light and they're so comfortable and has that built-in Bixby, which I love. Um,
Right.
But like Chris, my bandmate, he's got a Les Paul, and that's like wearing an elephant around your neck. Those things are so heavy. I just can't do it, you know. But the Gretsch is just really nice and light. And it's always an interesting, like whenever I have a show and I'll take out the Gretsch and people will like, ooh, it's like, it always makes me laugh because it's like, okay, they appreciate a good looking guitar. Awesome.
And you had actually just a little bit ago mentioned the guitar you've been using for your recent EPs, and I definitely wanted to bring those up because over the last, what has it been, at least over a year now, you've
Yeah.
been kind of sporadically recording and releasing EPs over on your Bandcamp page. And I'm kind of curious where that inspiration came from to start doing that because Tony and I know we have struggled to, set aside time out of our schedule to not only write music, but definitely to record music. And then
Yeah.
I know both of us kind of, we become too much of like being perfectionists. And before we even release anything, we spend like months and years working on it. And then we're never happy with it. But you're out here just like, you know, it seems like at least once a month releasing these EPs, usually like 4 or 5 songs. And
Yeah.
I find that super inspiring. I'm just kind of curious when that all began for you.
It was, see, it started about not this past July, but the July before. I did one EP, and then I think it was like 6 months until I did the next one. But it was Laurel was going away for work, and this is before we had our daughter. She was gone for the weekend. And I just felt like writing, and I didn't, and I'm writing all the time, but my process is different. And, sometimes it'll just be, it could just be a chord structure, or it could be a melody or something. But I have like books and books of like lyrics that aren't attached to any kind of song. So I just decided I want to do something different, and I've been messing around on the ukulele. And the thing that I played, I think, to start July Kitchen, is just like something I always mess around on the ukulele. So I just recorded it, and I was like, oh, okay. I ended on C. Why don't I just write a song in C? So I just did that. I just picked up the acoustic and just tried to be, and it wasn't intentional really. It was like, let's just see if I can do a spontaneous like 4 or 5 song EP. So I just sat there and I called it July Kitchen because I wrote it in the kitchen in July. It was a really original title. Nice. And so, I mean, you can hear our dog on it, which is funny. You can hear his collar, and on some of the other ones, you can hear our daughter crying or laughing, and it's just fun. And I think for me, I typically do them on Fridays because it's just a good release. It's a good way to kind of, welcome in the weekend and just kind of get rid of a little bit of that stress. And over the last year or so, as it started to pick up, there's been a lot more stress. I mean, not all negative, but being a new dad and moving, and there's some health stuff going on in my family. So there's just a lot on my mind. And the best way for me to kind of navigate all that is to write and to play. And some of the songs are silly. Some of them make no sense, and that's okay. And some of them are really heavy and really, but at the end of it, it's just cathartic just to kind of get that out. And it's really different from like when Chris and I start talking about ideas and stuff like that. I take my time with it. I think sometimes the songs happen quickly, but not like this. I mean, I basically take the ukulele and come up with a little thing. And it's usually like a minute or two. Okay, that's done. And then I pick up the guitar and I just start strumming and come up with a riff or a chord progression, and la la la, come up with a melody. And I was like, okay, that might work. And then I jot some words down and hit record. And then it's on to the next one. And that's why they're all so short. I don't want to overthink them, because I know if I do that, I'll just be super critical, because I've done that with Cluthe Lee. I've gotten like in my own head about the vocals, like, you sound like an idiot, or your solo is terrible here, or what are you doing? That's just not good. It's not healthy. So I think just ripping the Band-Aid off and just going for it and be like, there it is, warts and all. If you like it, cool. If you don't, that's cool too. It's out there. So,
and that's kind of inspired me. I don't know about you talking about that. Like after hearing your most recent EPs, it's really got me thinking, because I have like a ton of songs on I just recently transferred songs from my phone to my laptop, and I have like 60 songs, and like some of them are like full ideas, and then some of them are just like one guitar riff or whatever, melody. And I've gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, I like sharing music. It's cool to be able to say, hey, here's a finished thing that I made from scratch. But yeah, I definitely overthink it when I'm doing my music, and I feel like I got to get to the point where it's just like, I need to just be happy with it for what it is.
Yeah, and same here. Like, I find myself like thinking, okay, if I release something, it's going to be like a reflection of me. It's got to be my best work, but there's never going to be those perfect takes and stuff. So seeing you release, like this really spontaneous music, it's really cool, because it kind of almost feels like a journal entry or something really personal and soulful. And that's kind of redirecting me to kind of remember why I play music. And a large part is for expression. And I think as long as you're being you and, just being in for the ride, I think a lot of people can enjoy that.
Yeah. And I think it's just a healthy thing, right? It's just good to kind of you know, when the world is weighing you down or you have things on your mind, just pick up your guitar and just get lost. And you know, just to be able to kind of take a screenshot or a snapshot of that and put it out and just get it out there into the world. And it's just kind of like, okay, now you turn the page. So it's, you know, with all the transitions that we've been going through in the last year, it's definitely been helpful. And I've been picking up my guitar just a ton. And it's just, it's been good for me, for my mental health, just for every aspect of who I am. The more I'm picking up the guitar, the better it is, I think, for everybody.
I like what Tony said about like, especially the EPs kind of feeling like a journal entry because, you know, with some of the songs, you know, I definitely, you know, listening to the lyrics, there's a couple songs where I'm like, oh, you know, I think, you know, he's singing about, you know, his daughter, you
Yeah.
know, but then like you said, you know, you can also have, you know, the serious songs and you can have like the fun songs and like even going back to the Cluthe Lee albums, like, you know, I remember some of my favorites being the more fun songs like Defrost Mode,
Oh yeah.
or
Yeah, why's the world, why's it gotta be so cold? Why's the world, why's it gotta be so cold? Thinking it's time, hanging out on Defrost Mode.
or just like the more kind of upbeat rock songs. And I like that, you know, you're able to kind of write in different, you know, you don't have just kind of one lane that you're in.
Yeah.
That might be maybe from the different music that you listen to in your own time, you know, the different influences. Because I sometimes will hear some of your songs and I get shades of Petty, you know.
Yeah.
But like Tony, like his first mind went to Radiohead, and that's not even a band that he, you know, normally listens to.
Right.
But it still sounds like you know.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I think I mean, music's supposed to be fun, you know, and you know, I started playing drums in that band just because it was fun, because I love music, and it's the same thing. It's gonna sound ridiculous. Every time I, you know, like put new strings on my guitar and I play a D for the first time and they're perfectly tuned, it's like, you know, it's like, where is that D chord gonna take me?
Yeah.
Because it's gonna take you somewhere different every time. And sometimes it'll take you down a path of like, you know, like serious reflection. Like there's a song of mine that I'm just thinking of the songs that are all in D. See You Again is about my dad and when he passed, and that's what London Dream is about as well. There's definitely, that comes up a lot in my writing. But Defrost Mode is also D. So it just depends, you know, how are you hitting it? You know, are you playing it cleanly? Are you playing it fast? Are you finger picking it? You know, what's your mood like? You know, all that kind of stuff. So a D can take you so many different places. So it's pretty fun to think about.
I really like the imagery of you mentioning, you know, stringing your guitar and hitting that D. It reminds me of like, I think that should be like the musician's Ratatouille moment. Like Ratatouille when he has the bite and it takes him back to his childhood. Like,
yep.
You know, for a musician, that's kind of what that does for us. Now I know you said, you know, you guys are finishing up the Cluthe Lee album, and you've been doing the EPs, but I believe too, you've mentioned that you're working on maybe a solo album, right? As well.
Yeah. And that's done as well. That, I think what the delay on that is, I need to be the one to mix and master it, and everything that I need to do that is in storage. So once we're settled into a house, you know, and not only that, I think the Cluthe Lee I'd like to put out first. And I said that to Chris because I think a lot of people have kind of been waiting on it, because we've been, you know, we have enough to where there's enough stuff. And I think Chris he released one compilation on Bandcamp the other day, volume 1, and he emailed me the other day. He's like, here's volume 2. Do you think these songs are okay? I'm just like, good God. And if I really look back through our emails, we have like 180 songs that we've written together. So there's so much unreleased stuff that we can kind of pull from, which is great, but I'm excited to get set up and start working on some new stuff. So I think the solo album, I mean, I think I have one song called See You Again, which I released on iTunes and Spotify and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah,
I
I mean
love that
that's
one.
that's supposed to be the first single, and I released it like
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Yeah, because
Whoops.
I remember because I was when I was typing your name into Spotify to get to the Cluthe albums, like your own page popped up,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh, does he have? But yeah, it's just the one song. But I was curious if that was going to be on the solo album because I love that.
Oh
It
yeah.
has a very like it sounds like something like Eddie Vedder would do on a solo album. You know, like
Okay.
it kind of reminds me of like Into the Wild, but with maybe a little bit more instrumentation. You know.
It's called See It All.
Started way before we knew what we were waiting for, and we listened. I got a last word. Hoped and prayed to avoid the worst. No formula for this, it's what they say. No rhyme, no reason, no explanation here. If you close your eyes, you will see God. If you close your eyes, you'll see it all. You just gotta believe in something that unspoken in yourself. You want it, start to lie, and you
Yeah, that was a fun one to do. That's Laurel's been teaching me piano, trying to, because it's so different from guitar. Can't quite
Yeah.
wrap my head around it. But there was this point in time when I was pretty comfortable. That's a pretty straightforward song. It's got like 5 or 6 chords in it, nothing crazy. But once I had like I could actually sit there and play it and add, little flourishes here and there. I'm like, oh, ooh. So it's like, look what I can do. But that's totally different, from anything I've done. To have piano featured on one of the songs. And yeah, that was just a fun song to put together. And it's an old song. And I mean, there's a lot of old stuff that I have just kicking around in notebooks that are finished songs that I've just never released. And that was one of them. And I always wanted to redo it because I wrote that right after he passed away. A year after he passed away, so 2005. So it was kind of fun to revisit it and work it up again. But yeah, that'll definitely be on it. Um, there's one song that was going to be a Cluthe Lee song. And then I took it back and Chris was fine with it. Um, because it was, pretty personal. And he's like, yeah, dude, just do what you want to do. So that'll be on there. And but there's a lot less instrumentation. You're not, for the solo album, it's more going to be just straight ahead, maybe just acoustic and a little bit of lead guitar, or acoustic and bass, or acoustic and piano. There's not going to be like this fuller sound like you'll get from some of the Cluthe Lee stuff.
And I also wanted to ask, because you brought up your wife, and she's on a couple of the Cluthe Lee songs.
Yeah.
She has a lovely voice.
Yes, she does. Much better
I
than mine.
I love Predicament.
Yep.
And I remember, I don't know where you were living at the time, but I remember seeing videos of you guys doing some shows. Like, I don't know if it was at like a coffee shop or where, but I remember you guys doing shows.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what that process was like, because Tony now, since he's released his first album last year, he's done a couple shows at like our local mall and whatnot. And I've never performed besides that one time, Tony, where you and I and Ishan did that weird gig. I've never performed live in front of people other than family, so I'm curious how it is like for you performing live, in front of people.
Terrifying. It's terrifying, but as soon as that first chord is played or the first note is sung, it goes away. I know that sounds really cliche, but that's how I feel. And I get so in my head, and I'll like write and rewrite the set list like 4 times, like, oh, this doesn't flow right, and overanalyze, everything. But I love it. Like I said, I've started in high school, and kind of when I started writing my own songs, there was a friend of mine in college who was the karaoke DJ at a local bar in that college town. And sometimes, like every once in a while, he'd let me like plug into the PA, and I just bring my acoustic and I plug in. And I play before karaoke or in between, like they do like 2-hour blocks. So I'd play in between. And that really kind of like helps me get over a lot of the stage fright stuff. The band I was in Houston, we played a lot of big shows. I mean, we were playing at this club down here called Fitzgerald's, which was an absolute trip, because like I went to that club when I was in high school and saw bands that I love, like Ben Harper, play there. To just stand on the same stage was just kind of mind blowing. We were playing some big shows, and then I'm just open. Like, even since we've been back here, I've reached out to some of my friends down here that are musicians, or maybe they're kind of connected to the community a little bit more. Just always be open to like open mics and breweries. Like, I'll play breweries. I mean, they may not pay you much. They'll give you $50, but they'll give you, a free couple beers. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. But I enjoy it. The place that I think you're thinking of, Rico, is when we lived in Portland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a coffee house there, and we play once a month, sometimes twice a month, and it was a great little setup. And it was a friend of mine, Sean, and he said, "Hey, you should reach out to this coffee place, because they're always looking for musicians." And so I did, and they basically, I could just call them and say, "Hey, do you need someone this month?" And they'd be like, "Yep." But they were booking us out to where we play like once a month for a good year and a half. It was pretty awesome. It was
Right on.
super nice people.
Yeah, I can't imagine performing in front of people, and I don't even feel like I have stage fright, but like I don't know, like I think I would lose all confidence in myself the second I'm like standing in front of people. I don't know how you guys do it, because Tony too plays in other bands, and he's done gigs, and that I feel like must be a little easier not playing your own music maybe, but and I'm proud of my music, but man, I have a hard time imagining doing it in front of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, but I think you just got to realize that, if people walk out, because it's happened to me, or bands that I'm in, if they walk out, they're not into it, and not everyone's going to be into your music, and that's okay. I mean, that's okay. And there've been times where, like Chris and I played the PJ 20 pre-party, which was absolutely insane. That night was just wild. And so many people. And then, the only other gig we played was at that coffee shop in Dallas, and I think there were maybe 10 people. So the PJ20 gig, they were over the fire marshal's code. So I think there were like 2 or 3,000 people there.
Was that the one set up by like the Wishlist Foundation? Yeah, okay.
Yep. And McCready was supposed to show up. And I think because they were over
The
capacity, he's like, nope. And I don't blame him, because a lot of people were quite intoxicated, and it was crazy. But yeah, so it's just, and I know that everyone that was at the Wishlist thing didn't enjoy what we were doing, just like everyone at the coffee shop that we played didn't enjoy it. And that's okay. You just have to, I think it's just good just to share your music. So I would encourage you to just take the Band-Aid off and just play an open mic where no one's going to be there. Maybe just go there with Lindsay.
Yeah, no, that would be a good idea. Yeah, at least then one person would be there that I know is enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Do you have any like gig horror stories or anything? I know for me, I was playing for Singer, and we were opening for like this Snohomish festival thing. And right on the first song, within the first 10 seconds, our drummer broke the snare head and didn't have a backup snare.
No.
So we just had to, go through the set pretending it was working. But
is that Bryce?
Yes, that was Bryce.
Okay,
how did he pretend the snare was working?
Well, he just kept hitting it. It sounded like he was hitting it with a toothbrush, but
that's awesome. God, horror stories. I mean, I busted a lot of strings, which, without a backup guitar. So, trying to think of the band that I was in Houston. We had it was like a band showcase thing where there were 10 bands on the bill, and our bass player got really lippy with someone else in one of the other bands, and there was almost, our bass player he took his bass off and was about to jump in the crowd and like throw down with this guy. So that was bad. but the thing is, we started as a 3-piece with just 2 guitarists and a drummer. So like when he took off his bass, we just kept playing because we already knew the parts. It's like, oh, we're good. We've played shows as a 3-piece before. So that didn't make him very happy either. But yeah, that was kind of bizarre. He almost got into a fist fight. Yeah, I can't think of any others off the top of my head.
I mean, that's pretty good if that's the worst of it.
Yeah. I mean, you're vulnerable up there for sure, and you're just kind of laying bare, but who cares? Gotta have fun.
That's right. Now, we'd love for you to play us a couple songs.
Sure.
If you don't mind. And if you play whatever you want, if you want to play Cluthe lead song, solo song, we'd love to hear. We've had guests on the episode before, but we've never had a guest that was willing to play right on the podcast. I think this is a great opportunity for that.
Oh yeah, I don't know what to play. You mentioned Predicament earlier, so I could play that.
Sweet, awesome.
1, 2, 3.
Quiet predicament you're in. Life has a way to keep happening. Today you've been down great. Focus lens you cannot escape. Don't try what hangs in the air. Quite a predicament you're in. You're humming over it as if you don't care. Quite a predicament you're in. Don't try, just give it.
Before you go, because I do know you probably have to get going here pretty soon. I would hate for you to leave before we mention a little bit of Pearl Jam, since that is our, you know, what brought us together.
Yeah.
I'm very curious on what your feelings or expectations are for their new album, because as I don't know, Tony, if you know as much information, but they're definitely releasing an album this year. Could be actually in a couple months. We're supposed to be getting a new single here pretty soon. It is being produced by Andrew Watt, who did the last Rolling Stones album, Ozzy album, and the most recent Eddie Vedder album. So I'm just curious if because I don't even really know how much you liked their last album, Gigaton. So I'm curious of what if you're feeling hopeful for the new album, or if you're at the stage where it's like, oh, if they release anything, you'll listen to it,
I'll definitely check it out. And I did like Gigaton. I didn't like the whole album. I think the first half of that album is pretty strong, in my opinion. I think the songs are better live. I've actually seen them. I was at Ohana in 21, Oklahoma City 22, and then Fort Worth last year. So I've actually heard quite a few of the songs live, and they all translate pretty well from the ones that I heard. When I heard, or someone sent me an article. There was a quote of like being a drum heavy album. I was like, oh hell yeah, let Matt Cameron just go off and then build around that. I think that's a recipe for success. I'm hoping that I really like the way Jeff writes. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I like his solo stuff a lot too. And I think he has a bit more of the hard edge kind of punk elements of some of his stuff. So if that creeps in with Matt's heavy drumming, yep, I'm excited.
Yeah, I am a little I like Gigaton, but it took a long time for it to grow on me. It still is growing on me. Um, I I like Lightning Bolt a lot when it first came out, and then over the years I've kind of liked it less, which doesn't happen to me with a lot of albums. But with that album, I think I was just so excited for it that
Yeah.
I just almost made myself like it more than I did. Um, but yeah, I've read some things. I'm very weary of Andrew Watt, because if I'm being honest, I did not love the last Eddie Vedder Soul album. And a lot of it was the production I just didn't like. And unfortunately, I'm not a Stones guy, so I didn't hear the Stone album.
Stone's album's good.
Is it good? So
Yeah.
a lot of people have said that. I think Chris said he liked it too. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
like
try
it.
to go in with an open mind. And I've read articles where Eddie said like this, he thinks this is their best work ever, which has
Yeah,
me excited. Bold
apparently
statement.
that's what he said at the thing, which is a bold statement. I think the Eddie solo record, I think it was too long. Uh,
Yes.
I think I mean, I'm all for jamming with everyone under the sun, but I just feel like some of those duets could have been cut.
Yeah.
There are a couple of good songs on it. Um, the production's different, but I don't know. I mean, it didn't sound like And I've seen him, I saw him at Ohana with the Earthlings backing band, and it was great, but it didn't sound like Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam played the next night and it was like a million times better.
Yeah. Which is
So,
weird because I mean I love all those guys in that band. Glenn
yep,
Hansard. I know the three of us love Glenn.
yep,
Chad Smith, right? Drumming.
yep.
Love Chad. Um, but
I mean, it
yeah,
was
it's
great, but I'd rather hear, Pearl Jam, and I'm curious what it's going to sound like. So, I mean, when everyone's saying it's heavy, 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 those people that have heard it, that gets me excited. So,
yeah,
angry and heavy Pearl Jam. Yep.
yeah,
Sign me up.
and you and Tony too. I don't know. I don't think it's coming this year after all, but supposedly Soundgarden has one last album that they're going to release. Um,
Really
I
looking forward to that one. Not sure what
Yeah.
we're gonna get, but I'm just itching for some more Soundgarden.
They have so much stuff. There's an album's worth, and then they're sitting on all this live material, and I really want the live stuff to come out. The new album will be great. I love Soundgarden, absolutely. Um, but man, they were such a powerhouse of a live band. So the more live stuff we can get from them, the better. It's just his it's all tied up with his estate, and it looked like everything had been reconciled, and then it
not
got really
again.
messy again really fast.
Right. Bummer.
Yeah, huge bummer. Huge bummer, and not only that, it's a bummer for the fans, but it's also a bummer for, his wife and kids and his bandmates because they're having to go through it again. I mean, that's basically like they're having to relive, the tragedy of losing him again and again every time they're litigating this thing. So it's just a mess. So,
Yeah, it's crazy the way that some of the music industry has to work.
yep.
But I do think there'll be some great music coming out this year, especially if the new Cluthe Lee album comes out this year.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it'll, I mean, I couldn't give a target date, but I'd say it should be out by the summer. And then uh, with my solo record, probably a couple months behind. It all just kind of depends on when we get settled into the house, so I can kind of build out my office and studio and kind of, go from there.
Yeah,
But I
and
think you'll like it. The new Cluthe release, it's solid. It's not as heavy as where it began. It's definitely not as heavy. And it's not as long either, but it's a pretty powerful record. I'm pretty proud of it. And I know Chris is too.
well, when you guys release it, we'd love to have you guys on another episode
Yeah, for
and have
sure.
you guys go over some of the songs and whatnot. We had fun doing that with Chris's album specifically and Tony's own album. So
Yeah,
yeah, we'd
we'd
love
love
to
to.
have you guys on to do that, and then when you get your solo album on to come back as well and to perform some of the songs from it.
Yeah, hopefully we can get the audio
Yeah,
synced up by
Hey,
then. So
yeah.
sorry
kinks
about
worked
that.
out.
I'm surprised that didn't work.
No, yeah, we'll figure it out. But thank you so much for giving us your time and coming on here and giving us the insight to your writing process and your inspiration and for all the listeners out there, I'm including links to Cluthe Lee albums and Matt's Bandcamp where you can go listen to his EPs and maybe by the time this episode comes out, there might even be a new EP. Who knows?
Probably.
Um,
I
and
I I I mean, I told you I recorded one on Friday, but it was all covers.
well,
Right.
Tony would love if you sent us. He's dying to hear the Elliott
No
Smith
name
cover.
number one.
Okay. I can do
Yeah,
that.
so if you can just yeah, Tony, we would just love to listen to it in private and just hear it.
Sure.
But yeah, so definitely go check out all of Matt's pages. I'll have them in the description. And yeah, I think that'll be it for this episode. Thank you everyone for listening. And until next time, we hope you take care and you'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.
Well, I'm the baby. Give me some space. I'll do and say what I want. Just get out of my face. Being the baby isn't always bad. Sometimes extra attention from mom and dad, and my sisters and brother, they're the best. I'd rather stand with them than the rest. Well, I'm the baby, done a few things wrong, but I survived long enough to sing this song. And I'm the baby, get out of my face. I'll do and say what I want, give me some space.